This is Chicken Ball. Come at us, bro.
Welcome back to Chicken Ball. Exciting episode today. The standard crew, a few folks are unavailable, so we tapped into our list of superb and supreme guests to bring on. First person I want to introduce, other than myself, Andrew will kick my ass if I don't introduce myself, is Scott. I am your host, Scott. But excited to bring Ireland's #1 Spurs fan, the Irish Kid himself, returning for his second appearance. David, how you doing?
Oh, good, man. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to come on. And it's good that you're branching out across Europe and you got the creme de la creme on.
the proper Spurs fans, right? Over there in Europe. But no, always a pleasure to have you on. You know, you and I have plenty of good conversation behind the scenes, and I'm glad you could join us. I know it's a little later over there in Ireland, but we make it work. With David also joining me, my good friend from the Podspur TV world, Tottenham Hotspur, you know, many different facets of what we do, but Andrew down in Phoenix. Andrew, how's it going?
It's good, man. I got to be honest with you, though. When you invited me to come on Chicken Ball today, I kind of half expected to be able to get in an argument with the other Andrew or Mord or someone else. And knowing it's just you, I'm like, oh, well, we do this all the time. So this is commonplace.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, this is commonplace for me.
Well, honestly, what I'm really doing is working diligently to get these guys kicked off the show and just replace them with people that I enjoy communicating with a little bit more. So
that makes
glad
sense.
to have you. And rounding out the crew today, everybody knows the real Shibon, the main man himself. There's not a pod in the Tottenham world that this man hasn't been on. He's rocking and rolling. But Shibon, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. So yeah, let's do this.
Yep. Always a pleasure to have you on, whatever pod it is that I'm a part of that you've joined. So pleasure. But lots to talk about today. Obviously, very exciting victory yesterday. Came a little bit later than I think anyone in the Tottenham world would have preferred. Bit of the squeaky bum time, as they say, but we certainly got it done. David, the first question I want to ask you, and definitely a topic of discussion that everybody's invested in right now, Gareth Bale. Got his first full 90 minutes yesterday in a Tottenham shirt. What do you make of that performance?
Look, it's a good start, lads. He hasn't really been what we expected. I think we all expected Gareth superstar back. In hindsight, it was never going to be the case. But if we could get a 70% of the superstar that we saw to Real Madrid, it'd be absolutely perfect for the squad. But look, yesterday's game against Wickham, it's a good platform to build on. Do you know what I mean? Like completing the 90 minutes and everything else, hopefully it gives him that passion and that desire back for football, which I think he has lost, to be honest with you. Hopefully he gets that back after yesterday's performance. And of course, he got the goal just before that brought us level, which was exactly what we needed. I thought he looked very handy on the right-hand side, to be fair. I thought he looked good. He kept on cutting inside and creating problems. Look, he still looks a bit rusty with some of his shots, and that yesterday some of them were kind of lackluster. But look, he'll get there. Look, if we can get him fit and firing now, and even have him as an impact sub off the bench, he'll be absolutely perfect. But look, he's played 13 games for Tottenham and he's got 4 goals, so it's not a bad return for a player that really hasn't featured at all.
Yeah, and he scored in every competition as we've seen, on the Twitter sphere today. So I'm with you. Goal was late too, Andrew, like David said, late in the first half anyways. I think 45th minute, if not into extra time. Walk us through, in elaboration of David's comment, the importance of that goal and probably what it did to Spurs onto a victory.
Yeah, it was certainly timing wise extremely important. I liken it kind of to the goal that Spurs got in the previous game against Sheffield, from Steven Bergwijn, I believe it was, scoring right after Sheffield had tied the match, and kind of, not allowing the, if you go into the break there down 1-0 away to Wickham, all of a sudden things are looking really weird and uncomfortable. And that's not to say that they weren't still really weird and uncomfortable for 40 of the 45 minutes in the second half. They were that, but Spurs were certainly on the front foot, and especially after making the number of substitutions that they made, Wickham really didn't have a sniff of things in the second half. And it just, it made everybody kind of calm down and relax when Bale was able to get that goal right before half. So the timing is everything, as they say, and it really was in this case as well.
Well, I love it, and I'll stick with you for a follow-up question. When we look, as David said, 4 goals, they've been in 4 different competitions. Is this what we expected to get out of Gareth Bale? Is it not quite enough? Probably a question you've been asked before, but what do you make of that?
Well, no, it's not what we expected, but that's because Spurs fans are kind of moronic. and
A little bit irritating at the moment.
And everyone expected him to come in and be Gareth Bale, but this is not Gareth Bale. This is, Gareth Bale at the tail end of his career, Gareth Bale, which is a nice guy to have around, but it's not the previous Gareth Bale. I do think that it's enough for sure. I think it's enough because he's a squad player at this point. He is, a nice guy to have on your team and to be able to come in and do a job. He's essentially the right wing equivalent of Harry Winks. I mean, he's a nice guy to have in the squad and come in these situations and do enough of a job, but he's not a guy you want or can have in your every week Premier League starting 11 because it just doesn't work when you try to do that. So I think he's doing enough, and not only that, but there are intangibles to be had there too. He's obviously a guy who's won everything. He's got a presence about him. He's a leader, and all of those things are nice to have, especially when you are trying to change the mindset of a club and get back to winning actual silverware. It's something that he knows how to do. But that doesn't mean that he needs to be in the 11 every week and starting at right wing and banging in 10 to 15 goals a year. That's just not going to happen. And to get back to the expectation side of it, I think we all got a little stupid when he signed because of nostalgia and because of, a number of other reasons, thinking that was going to happen. And it's okay that we did that. Like it's fine. We were all excited. But it's just not going to happen. It's just not the way it's going to be and not the way it ever should have been. But we should be happy that he's able to come in and contribute in a match like this or in Europa League matches, and then be the late sub, that can come in a Premier League game and maybe change things. I mean, we saw him do it earlier this year against, I'm blanking, but I think it might have been West Brom, where he came in and got a late goal. Those are the kinds of things he can contribute, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, well said. West Brom, Brighton, one of the two, I think, but the point stands. I completely agree with you. I think intangibles is a great word here because he offers many of them. And I think as in the modern era, the modern football fan maybe looks past the intangibles, but they're there. Yeah, well said. Shiban, another guy that I think there's questions being asked. How much is he impacting the squad from a positive perspective? Do we need more? Is it enough? Vinicius got the start up top yesterday. What do you make of all of that?
I think, well, with Vinicius, we have to remember he doesn't speak that much English, if any. He only came, I think, towards the very tail end of the window. So I know I don't think they had the traditional preseason with the friendlies and everything else. So which is obviously hampered things. And, I think that's something that has to be factored into it. But like I said, I think, we have done the best we can because, as has been said, it's so hard to find someone who's going to come in and be willing to be a Kane backup. I know Mauricio Pochettino said, I think I can't remember who it was. He said, I don't want that player that doesn't want to challenge his place. If Harry Kane wants to start, if Harry Kane's fit to start, he starts. That's just how it is. He is a world-class player. He's just on that level. I think he's a striker. He could play for Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. He just is that level of striker. So you need someone who is kind of willing to, play the odd 15 minutes, 20 minutes there, which is important because this is a team game, it's a squad game. And so, I mean, I think Vinicius, I don't think he played, he made some good runs, held the ball up well. He's not banging in goals, but a lot of it is just about being that target man, being that center point. I remember, I don't know if you remember, Dave, do you remember Gregor Rashak from years ago? Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Oh God, he was just. I remember he came against Leicester or something in the FA Cup. I saw him play once, and he was just so slow. Just didn't have the pace. Just couldn't do it. And obviously, it didn't matter because we had Mido, we had Keane, all those guys. But ultimately, Vinicius, tall, quick, can run channels. Definitely that's what we've been asking out for. Are we going to pay 40 million for him, which I think is the fee that we have to pay?
Correct.
I doubt it, but no. I mean, like I said, for a loan deal, I don't know how much the loan deal is. He's a body. We have tried so desperately to shoehorn in Dali Ali last season when Kane was injured. We wrecked Sonny because we kept playing him over and over and over again. So, I don't know what the other option is. I mean, I'd welcome what are the other options? I mean, was it Danny Ings maybe next year if he fulfills his, he wants to apparently leave Southampton, but even then, they're different kind of players.
Yeah. No, well said. I think a good follow-up question, and I'll kick it off to David, is when we're looking at our backup striker, we hear things like Mourinho saying, yes, we need somebody who's willing to come in and compete. We also hear Pi saying something like, we need somebody who's willing to be a backup to Kane. Vinicius situation, do you really think that the conversation was truly along the lines of coming in and compete with Harry Kane, or did Vinicius understand that he was never going to get significant minutes? Harry Kane is Harry Kane, number one striker in the world, in my opinion. Do you think he really came in expecting to compete with Harry Kane, or did he know where he stood?
Look, to be honest with you, I think he knew where he stood. But look, if the guy is under the pretenses that he's coming in to try and compete with Harry Kane, well, fair play to him, because that's the mentality of a player I want at the club. I don't want a mentality of a player where he's coming in and he's accepting to be backup, because it's not good for the team. You know what I mean? If you're coming in as a second striker, your ultimate game should be to look at Harry Kane and try and displace the great Spurs legend. That's what you should be coming in with the attitude of. Look, Vinicius, I think he's played 12 games now. He's got 6 goals and 3 assists. It's not a bad record. But one thing, he's not worth 40 million. That's the big sticking point. If Benfica would take 20 million, half of that, I would pay it. But I wouldn't pay the 40 million because it's a big gamble. And to be honest with you, you're never gonna get your money's worth if you pay the 40 million. It's an inflated price. But one thing I will say is if that is his ultimate goal to come in and try and displace Harry Kane, but then I want him at my club, because that's the attitude and mentality we need here at Tottenham. We've too many players that are happy to, collect their wages, sit on the bench, be injured without getting any real ambition to try and get back out on the pitch. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I want players with that mentality at the club. But yeah, no, I would only be willing to pay 20, and 40 million is way too much for a caliber his player. Because look, for me, I actually don't think he's ever going to replace Harry Kane. I don't think he is going to ever end up trying to, giving Mourinho a selection headache. I don't think that will happen.
But, yeah, well said. No, very well said. And I agree with you. I think Mourinho is the type of guy that's going to say, I don't care how good you are on paper. Even if you're delusional, thinking that you can start above Harry Kane, I want you bringing the delusion to this club that you're better than Harry Kane, even if you're nowhere near as good as Harry Kane. Believe that you are, push yourself, fight for those minutes. So I'm right there with you. And, I think based on Jose's comments and his ability, I do get the sense that he came in expecting to compete with Harry Kane. Never going to happen, never will. I don't care how talented you are. I'm happy, like you said, the 6 goals and 13 appearances, a good return for my backup striker. Second a few before I kick it to Andrew, I do kind of want to talk about this idea of giving folks time, right? We've got Gareth Bale, who's starting to find his feet. We've got Vinicius, who, like you just said, has the 6 goals and 13 appearances. Yeah. Is this pressure that we see fans putting on these players, is it a result of the modern game where we expect folks to, or players to, advance past realistic expectations, or are they on pace for what we should expect from a new signing?
No, look, to be honest with you, this whole thing about giving players time, in Ndombelé's case, it worked out, but everyone knew even when he wasn't fit, there was a baller in there. But then you go to the other end of the scale where we're giving players too much time. Like you have Lamela, who's barely ever got onto the pitch. He's at the club 7-8 years. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people gas up Harry Winks. Yeah, fair enough. He had a good game yesterday, and he's probably my man to match. But 2 games against championship sides, Stoke and Wickham, it's not good enough to be at Tottenham. It's as simple as that. Like, for me, like this whole mentality of, we want to go and win things, it's the exact mentality I want at the club, to be honest with you, because, like, look, we've been starved of trophies. We've been the nearly men for so many years, and we all know that our signings haven't been good enough. And for me, it's up to Joe Lewis and the board to start putting their hand in the pocket and start funding the players to come into the club that are good enough. So we're not going after like Gareth Bale trying to bring him back to the club, because it was never going to work out the way everyone wanted it to work out. Like, there was links of Christian Eriksen come back to the club. We're just going backwards. We're replacing Gareth Bale with Gareth Bale and Christian Eriksen with Christian Eriksen. Where's our ambition? So for me, I like the expectation on the club, because eventually you're going to get change. Like, we all know that Levy is told by the board to make this club self-sustainable and run on its own money. But, like, if you want to be a club that's going to win trophies, and, like, it's crucial for Harry Kane and to keep Harry Kane and Son too, you have to go on by players to match their ambitions. We've too many passengers in the squad. Like, I'm a firm believer we need to get behind Jose as well, because, like, Jose is going to bring in the right players with the right mentality. Like, we have too many club players at this club with the wrong mentality who are just, like, 3 points doesn't mean everything to them. Do you know what I mean? They're just happy to kind of, if they get a game, they get a game. But, like, then you have Harry Kane, who just, he laces up the boots and he can't wait to get out there and win games for Tottenham. And that's what it's about. Like, at the end of the day, like, if our board invested in the right players instead of always going for the cheaper option, we wouldn't be sitting here about talking, giving players time.
Yeah, very well said. I could not agree more. I think we have to balance the ambition of our current squad against the need for depth, for reserves. But then we also have to balance, like you just said, this idea that we can't be replacing people with people that have been here before. We need to refresh. We need to revamp our ideas. Very well said. And I think on that note, next question I have for you. Oh, Andrew, go ahead.
I think it's also important to note that when you're talking about giving, players like Bale and Vinicius time, these are both players that were brought here on loan and as surplus, as depth, if you will. And that's kind of what they have done. So giving them time to, as I finish that sentence, to do what? Because they're kind of doing exactly what they've been asked to do. Vinicius has come here, and even though I hear what you're saying, David, like, you'd love for him to have ambition and challenge Harry Kane, that's not really going to happen because he's Carlos Vinicius, not Harry Kane. So he's here to be the alternate player to Harry Kane. And with Bale, it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, he's a nice squad depth player at this point in his career, and those are fine things. Like, I don't know what we need to give them more time to do, because they're kind of doing what they should be doing as, especially as loan players. It's not like these guys, either of them, I don't personally think are part of the long-term picture for this team. I mean, I don't think Bale's here much more than this season. And I don't really think that could be the same case with Vinicius. I don't know if he sticks around beyond this season either.
The thing is, what I say to you is like, what is the long-term ambition? Because instead of bringing in like Gareth Bale on loan, why aren't we going out and signing the next best prospect to come in and give him time? That's long-term ambition. Bringing Bale in is a stopgap. And at the end of the day, we have too many squad players in this squad. Sissoko is a squad player, now finds himself in the first team. Harry Winks was always a squad player, now finds himself in around the first team. Ben Davies has been here 7 years as a squad player, now he finds himself in and out at left back. Eric Dyer was never good enough under Pochettino. He's now our main centre back. Serge Aurier, who made many mistakes from his second choice to Kieran Trippier, is now starting. The problem is that we have too many squad players, and too many squad players starting in our starting 11. Like,
I think you're right about that, but I also think
never be starting.
I think you're right about what you say, but I also think you have to look at, they did bring in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who is, completely changed the starting 11. They did bring in Sergio Reguilon in the same deal with Gareth Bale. He's completely revamped the left back spot, which was mostly a zero the last year and a half prior to him being there. So they did bring in players to completely change the 11. And if you're talking about the summer transfer window in the middle of a pandemic, they were widely praised for what they did. And if you bring in a couple of players to really revamp the 11 like they did in Højbjerg and Reguilon, and then a couple of other players to be stopgaps to get you through this year, I don't really see a problem with that. I totally appreciate what you're saying about you want to continue to bring in, new blood and prospects to completely revamp the team, but that doesn't happen in one window. And if they can do it piece by piece over a couple of windows, that's good enough for me as long as they keep doing it. And stopgaps are going to happen. And I think Bale and Vinicius are perfectly fine stopgaps for what they're doing right now.
And spending money just isn't about ambition. I mean, obviously, Chelsea spent 225 million.
Yep.
And they bought some good, very good. I mean, Werner's a good player. Havertz, they bought some very good players, but there's no balance. There's no real thought in them. It's just a case of, I don't know, Abramovich has been given his credit card back and been allowed to spend money, kind of thing. So I think it's finding that balance. I mean, look, I think they say that 1 in 3 transfers are going to work out for you. So we've made 7 transfers, I think, and I would say Højbjerg has been fantastic. Sergio Reguilon been very, very good, and then it kind of goes down, on a bit of a sliding scale. But Joe Hart, we needed someone that could basically be a good number 2, homegrown. He does that. Gareth Bale, obviously, we were hoping. I think many of us were hoping he could be that force of nature, but age doesn't work that way, especially when you have hamstrings like he's had, to be that force of nature. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So, like I said, I think definitely it's a lot of money. I mean, obviously, they talk about spending a lot of money in terms of wage on fee on Carlos Vinicius. I'm obviously spending 300,000 a week on say Gareth Bale. That's a lot of money to spend on a squad player. It's ambitious, but it's a lot of money to spend on a squad player. I think come next year, chances are, assuming that there is Euros, at the end of the season, and chances are he does that, he'll probably think, maybe, do you know what, I can go to China or wherever, earn a shed load more money, or he'll say, do you know what, I want to stay here. I think he'll come to a crossroads, just as as we have. But I think spend money, I said you've got to spend it wisely, and I think for the most part we've done that. I mean, we've made some good, astute loan signings. As Andrew said, they were there to provide depth. And if they do brilliantly, hopefully we can sign them. But it doesn't always work out that way. Like I said, I don't think it's always going to work out. What was it? I think Højbjerg, he's, apart from Joe Hart, I think he's the cheapest, isn't he?
And to your point, even the Matt Doherty signing was pretty much a depth one when you consider you still have Serge Aurier there. I mean, he was, I think, at the beginning of the season, Doherty was thought to be like, oh, this is our new right back, but he's obviously proved to just be depth as well, with Aurier emerging back as kind of the first choice.
Well, Doherty was never brought in to be second choice. Doherty was brought in to be first choice, and it hasn't worked out. But the thing is, my point is, we paid, I think it was 13 million for Doherty. Another 8 to 10 million would have got you Max Aarons. There's your long-term plan. There's your long-term plan off Norwich. Max Aarons.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
There. Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I mean, that might be a signing that they're able to do this summer. Who knows? I personally, I'm not the biggest Max Aarons fan, but if they think that that's the right direction to go, they'll still have that opportunity. It's not like that ship has sailed in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I think there's a good conversation to be had around this window up against our prospects, or our prospective goals for the season is probably a better way to say that. Before we get into that, though, I'm going to ask Shiban one more question about these squad players versus, tailor-made, ready to go first 11 guys, and uncomfortably so. I kind of want to talk about Harry Winks. I love Harry Winks, but and I'll say this, I'm well aware that every podcast in the Tottenham world has talked about Harry Winks and, what his role is within the squad, but I still think it's worth the conversation because we look at him yesterday, he man of the match, scored a very important goal, but again, it was against Wickham in the FA Cup. So Winks keeps popping up in these moments where, it's our opponent is weakened enough to give Winks a start, but then he steps up and performs phenomenally. So Shiban, my question is like, does Winks continue to have a role in our depth, or is he surplus? Is he one of these squad players that could benefit from more minutes elsewhere?
I think it's essentially on Winks, really. I think Winks, what I like about, say, Højbjerg is that he's the kind of player that looks to take control, lead. and we have. Do you know what? You know, we always say we have a lack of leaders, a lack of. I think we have passengers. I think that Dave, what you said, passengers.
Yeah.
I think we haven't got passengers, not in terms of their ability, but they're not willing to say, "Give me the ball. I'm going to make something happen." Yeah, you will see Kane demand the ball. I remember a game against, I think, Leicester years ago, after the title was over, and he just he was giving Sonny bad looks when I passed him the ball, because he was like, "I want the ball. I'm going to make something happen." And I think that's on Harry Winks. I don't know if that's his personality, but here's a guy that a couple of years ago was man of the match, but definitely a contender for man of the match against Real Madrid. 2 incredible games, and he was playing superb. And then he had that injury, and I think personally, I don't think he's ever mentally recovered from that injury. Because that cost him a World
Ankle,
Cup.
right?
Yeah, he was an ankle injury. It was a horrible. I think it was against Burnley at Turf Moor. I think he clattered into one of the sideboards. It's a freak injury. It is an absolute freakish injury. It cost him a World Cup place, because I think he could have gone on to play, maybe not start, but he could have been definitely a contender for that squad. And I don't know, he's just never seemed to go on and crack on that next level, because it's so hard. I mean, England, if you could say someone, let's say England, to digress, but say Jordan Henderson, he was seen as a very solid player, put his foot in, tackle, leadership, that kind of stuff. But he's evolved now. He's developed. I wouldn't say he's obviously not going to be a Xavi or Iniesta in terms of passing, but he's developed a good range of passing. He's evolved his game, and I don't think Winks has evolved the game. I think he's kind of digressed. I mean, who knows? Maybe that left foot shot. Maybe you'll think, you know what? I can pass to my right. I can take a good shot on my left. So that opens up my game. I don't know. I don't know that's happened. But like I said, if you've got someone like, say, Skip, who I think, apart from that game against, I think it's Barnsley, in the FA Cup, he has played pretty much every single minute of every game for Norwich. Now he comes back. I think it'll be interesting. I think, like I said, you need someone who's pushing you up. I mean, we talked about Vinicius. We talked about him earlier. Now, I'm not saying Vinicius is the reason why Kane has improved his game. I'm not saying that. I think Kane is the kind of person that's incredibly self-motivated. But if you have someone giving you that competition, that extra push in training, you think, oh my God, if I don't raise my game, they're going to look at him a lot more. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
The thing is, with Harry Winks, he hasn't done that. He hasn't done that. Like, how many players have we keep brought in? We brought in Sissoko after Harry Winks, Ndombele, Lo Celso, even Dembele. Do you know what I mean? Wanyama. You brought all these players in after Harry Winks has been at the club, and to keep displacing them. So you can't tell me that he's sitting there looking up at them saying, I may involve him again, because at the end of the day, he just hasn't. How many opportunities do we have to keep giving him before we just realise that this guy just isn't cut out to be at Tottenham? He's not good enough to be at this level and where we want to push to go and win trophies. He's just not. Like, people talk a lot about his passing. I think he's only like 4 or 5 assists through his whole Tottenham career. Like, his creativity. Like, I get, like, the thing is, he's very safe from the ball. And, like, as a centre midfielder, it's inexcusable against Fulham to put in 2 ground duels when you're looking for 3 points to kind of stay up the top end of the league. And he goes and puts in 2 ground duels. Now, to me, that's not a leader. That's not a leader. Højbjerg is what I think everyone thinks Harry Winks is, because Højbjerg gets stuck in, but he's very good on the ball as well. Harry Winks is only average on the ball. This is the problem. Like, the thing is, Harry Winks, like, whenever we talk about Harry Winks, all anyone can ever tell me is, that one game against Madrid, and then the 2 games he had against Champions League level teams this year. He's been at Tottenham nearly 8 years now. He's 24, 25. He's only another five good years left at the top. Do you know what I mean? So people that say to me he's a leader and that, we just need to give him time to evolve. How much time? Because this is why we sit here and never win anything. Because we keep hold of players because of sentimental reasons. I get it. He's a Spurs fan. He's homegrown. But Oliver Skipp's going to come back next summer and he's going to play ahead of Harry Winks. He's definitely going to be ahead of Harry Winks and Jose Mourinho's plans. And what are people going to say then about Harry Winks? Oh, but he's a good squad player. At the end of the day, what we need to be doing is bringing in players that are going to push our first 11 to inspire them to be better. And that way you get better results from the pitch. When you're in Dembele and you're looking over your shoulder and you see Harry Winks on the bench, who, in my opinion, Jose Mourinho doesn't fancy, and rightly so, there's very little chance he's going to be scared. So, he knows he can have a 6 out of 10. and he's never going to be taken off really if he gets fit. That's the problem. We need better players. We need better players as squad players. Like Harry Winks, for me, I think he will end up, by the time people realise he's not good enough and we cut the cord, he'll either end up top half of the Championship or lower half of the Premier League. If you want to win trophies, just Harry Winks is not your answer in the middle. Pulling out of ground jewels is not a leader. When you need 3 points and you're going to teams like, down lower in the league, which we tend to slip up on so far this season, you need players that are going to get with the rough and tumble as well. Like even against Wickham in the first half, he pulled out with 2 challenges and they broke from him. The reason why Højbjerg has to come on at half time, which was a masterstroke in my eyes by Mourinho, was because we're getting overrun in midfield. Anytime Harry Winks plays in midfield, we get overrun. He's not physical enough. So either we need to try him in a new position, like a centre attack in midfield, kind of like what Ericsson used to do, spray the ball side to side, or else he doesn't get in at all. But the thing is, it's up to Harry Winks to get into the manager's plans. And he's never once been the starting player in any of the manager's plans, even under Pochettino. He was only filling in because we had so many injuries.
Yeah, Andrew, get out on this. I feel like you got some thoughts.
I mean, Harry Winks to me is a squad player. I don't know what else, I agree with David. You would think there would be some more evolution in his game, I guess, over the last 4 years. And I think the point about the Real Madrid game is a good one. Yeah, it was a great game and it was a great moment, but he hasn't kicked on. And I'm not 100% sure that wasn't his peak. We talk about the apex mountain of his career could have been that day. And, I'm not saying that he can't be useful. Frankly, his biggest asset is that he's an England player. I mean, that's really important to this team right now because of where they are. So if you're going to consider, selling him or shipping him somewhere even on loan, you've got to replenish this squad with other England players. And it's important that he's homegrown and it's important that he meets all of these quotas. But I just don't see him, whether no matter who you're talking about in that secondary, defensive midfield role alongside Højbjerg, whether it's he or Sissoko, that's a place where this team needs to improve. And, I think that Winks is, like I was talking about earlier with Bale, he's suitable to come in against Wickham in the FA Cup and do a job. He's suitable in the Europa League to do a job. He's suitable even.
So would Alfie Devine and Harvey White, though.
I mean, perhaps we don't know that, but perhaps they would be. But he's suitable to play against West Brom or Fulham here and there, or name the other team. You're not gonna be comfortable with Harry Winks starting against Liverpool on Thursday or against Chelsea next Thursday. You're not going to be comfortable with that. That's not peak Tottenham. So I don't know what else you can say about Harry Winks in that scenario,
But if we're talking about backups as well, you're telling me you're going to have faith him coming off the bench in any of them games to try and go and win you the game if you need. You wouldn't.
No. I'm not saying I'm going to have faith in it. I'm saying he's a suitable bench player. He's suitable to come in. Look, there are 19 other teams in the Premier League that would like to have suitable players to come off the bench, and there are probably 14 or maybe 13 other Premier League teams that would like to have Harry Winks in their starting 11. That's a good player to have around. It's just, if you're talking a lot about ambition and wanting to move forward, he's not a player that does that for you if he's in your starting 11 all the time.
Yeah, well, and honestly, you hit the nail on the head, because there are probably 13 or 14 other teams that he would start for, and that's a fantastic transition into the last point I want to discuss here before we wrap up, and that ties into the prospect of us winning trophies this year and the prospect of the squad that we have in front of us. David talked about the fact that, really all of you talked about the fact that we brought in specific players this year. Questions can be asked of them. How ambitious were these signings? We also were coming off of a global pandemic in a year where Spurs had invested a lot of money, had to take out a loan to make sure that they were up to date with the progress of the financial side of the new stadium, et cetera, for lack of a better way of explaining that. They had to be pretty calculated. And so I look at some of these signings like a Doherty, like a Vinicius, even a Bale, right? PEH, who has obviously been far more than anyone could have ever expected. But my question is, and I'll stick with Andrew and kind of make my way around the horn. When you look at the signings, we all know they could be a little bit more ambitious. We all know we're coming off a global pandemic, and we all know we have a manager who is capable of achieving things beyond the squad at his disposal. Case in point, him winning Europa League with Marianne Fellaini at striker, right? The guy can win trophies in an overachieving fashion, right? So my question is, Andrew, and again, I'm going to make my way around the horn with the same question. What are our prospect of winning trophies this year, and what should we really be aiming for right now with the squad we have at our disposal?
Well, he's 90 minutes from possibly winning one of them, which is great. I mean, you've got a final in the pocket, which great. I mean, I don't know what else you could say about that. It's kind of a weird one because, you know, on the way to that final, Spurs had a game that was essentially forfeited, given to them by Leyton Orient, and you know, it was just kind of a weird Carabao Cup run, if you will. They're still alive for, you know, for the two other knockout competitions, obviously. And look, I mean, I don't think they're going to win the Premier League, but they're in contention for it because there's a lot of teams that are in contention for it. I frankly don't think they're going to win the FA Cup, and maybe they could win the Europa League, but like these are all things that in the past we would have been more hopeful for, while deep down in our gut not really believing they could happen. And this year we're hopeful for them and saying, oh, maybe they could actually happen. And that feeling in our gut is not like, you know, of like just telling ourselves that it's possible. We're actually like, oh, that actually, you know, could happen. I mean, the League Cup obviously could happen because he's in the final, but you know, into the last 16 of the FA Cup, you've already seen a couple of the bigger teams get knocked out. You think, hey, if they can go to Everton in a few weeks, and you know that's going to be a really tough match in the round of 16, but you get yourself into a quarterfinal with a win there, yeah, you give yourself a chance. I mean, that's and there's belief there. Europa League, you know, obviously a totally different ball game just because of the, you know, the field that is still in that, and it's, you know, it's only, there's still 32 teams left. A lot can happen, but you like the draw you've got in the round of 32, and you hopefully can get yourself into the last 16 and move on from there and see what happens. You know, and then when it comes to the league, like I said, I don't think they're going out and winning the Premier League, but I think the goal should just be make sure you're getting yourself back into the Champions League, and also see what happens, because we've seen, you know, we've seen Liverpool tumbling. We've seen, I mean, at this moment of this recording, I think City is sitting top of the league, which is like not something that people would have thought was possible 2 weeks ago. You know, we've seen United up there. We've seen teams like Leicester and Southampton, you know, play well this season. There's just so many weird possibilities for the Premier League this season. And, you know, you go out and you put your best foot forward and you try to get 3 points every week in, week out. I mean, it's like one of those things that I just don't really, you know, like I said, in the past, you would have thought I am hopeful for these things, but not really believed it in your gut. But like this year, you say it and you kind of think, oh, I don't have that feeling of there's no chance of this happening. There certainly could be trophies on the way. Shuban, what do you think about, like, you know, obviously the League Cup is like one thing. And like I said, they're 90 minutes away from that. But like, you know, you just, there's not that feeling in your gut, to me at least. Do you have that same feeling of like being hopeful for trophies, but also kind of believing that we could have at least one, maybe two this year?
I definitely, obviously, League Cup aside, I think we get past Everton quarterfinals. Obviously, you don't know the draw, but obviously Liverpool are out, Arsenal, who are the holders, they're out, and you know you got Chelsea, Man U, Man City, and obviously if we win ourselves, and I think Leicester as well. So we got so there are good teams in there, but you know if you can avoid those teams, then obviously you can increase your chances. Europa League, I'm not too sure. I forget who we play. It's been so long since we've
It's
actually
Wolfsburger.
Wolfsburg. Is that the German Wolfsburg or the?
No, they're in the Austrian league. They're actually further down in the league than Lask are, and we had Lask in the group.
Yeah, like I said, you get past that, you got a good chance. Obviously, the Champions League dropouts come in, so you know how that goes. And even let's say the league, I mean, you had, what was it? I think Chelsea were doing very well, and then they just recently sat their manager. You had literally talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer getting fired, and now up until this evening, he
Yeah.
was he was top of the league. This is a very very strange season. For me, I try not to look too more far beyond like the next 3 games. Does that make sense? Just win your next when you win your next 2 3 games. So those of you who don't know, I train marathon track. I do marathon running. And the only way for me to actually do the marathons, because I'm not a very good runner, is to say, do you know what? Make it towards that bit. Just get towards that bit. It's all you got to do. And I lie. I lie to myself. And I even myself say, liar. One bit will say to me, liar, because I know I want to go a bit further. And I'll do that.
Yeah.
And you'll play, but I just think you break it down into chunks because we are in 4 marathons. Yeah. If that makes any sense. Yeah. Four different races. Obviously, the league's a marathon. Europa League, almost a marathon. FA Cup, League Cup, less so, more like say half marathons. So they call it half marathons, but they're still challenging. They're still challenging in themselves. So, like I said, I do think I don't know the money. Do I think we have a good chance? Yeah. I mean, like for example, when we played in the League Cup final, was it 6 years ago now? We had beaten Liverpool. We had convincingly beaten Chelsea at that time 5-3 or something. But I always thought, well, you know, it would be a tough one because Jose knows how to win finals, which he did. He played very tactically, very astute, and they got the rub of the green occasion. I think the second goal came with Kyle Walker. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think having played City this season, I'm not saying City were terrible. I know they had injuries and stuff like that, but they weren't certainly missing tons of players. And I think we played very well. That's probably one of our best games. It was against City. So I don't think on our day, we have nothing to fear from anyone. We have got 4 or 5 great players. Yeah, and there's actually no in terms of midfield and attack and defensively. That's been our only issue. Defensively, can we keep it together? And maybe we can do it.
Yeah.
And to your point, Shuban, I mean, you talk about like the big teams that we kind of tend to have a problem with, and like there's one of them that has been the real thorn in the side, and that's Liverpool, and that's who we see Thursday. Like we've beaten the likes of Chelsea and United and City and Arsenal and whoever else you want to talk about. Like we've beaten those teams. So Liverpool's the only one that really, I don't want to say they have our number, but they're the one that has been a bugaboo thus far. And like you said, in terms of the FA Cup, like at least you don't have to see them in that competition anymore, but you do get your chance at them here in a couple days, which is nice.
And another thing I want to say before we go on to that, Liverpool thing, I said to Andrew yesterday, I was a bit annoyed that
you froze.
This happened during Podspur too.
Yeah, right. Siobhan froze. All right, well, hey, I'm going to bring it home with this. We're getting a little lengthy here, and I want to ask David this question. Sorry, Siobhan, we lost you for a second. I didn't mean to cut you off, my friend, but if you want to finish your thought, have at it.
No, I was going to say that basically, so in some respects, I was annoyed about that, but now looking back on it, I think that's actually a wise thing because you want players not to feel like cold, if that makes any sense. They've got some minutes in their legs. They've got that rhythm because rhythm's so important. I know that when I try to do any kind of run, I like to even do like a 10-mile run before I try and do an 18-mile, just to get that rhythm, just so my legs don't feel like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing to me, kind of thing. So, like I said, I look at Liverpool and I'm not going to say, oh, they haven't scored because yes, they scored on Sunday in the FA Cup. League's a different competition. But like I said, 2 years ago, I was shitting myself for playing Liverpool. Because that was definitely last because we were just absolutely abject, and especially in the league at that time, and Liverpool were just on a tear. And then the following year, they won the title because they were just passing everyone. Now, I'm not saying we don't. I'm not saying we don't fear them because they've got some good players, Salah, Firmino, Mane when they're on song are superb, but they've experienced dips in form. I know Scotty talked about he doesn't want to use the common tropes, the common hashtags about, I won't use those words, especially as one of them actually is the name of the rival podcast. But no, all I
No
want
one
to say is
said
this.
that.
I think you have to go in expectation you can win your games. And I think
Yeah.
I look at the game in a few days tomorrow, and I actually do think that we can win because I think in Ndombele, we have possibly, I have not seen a player like him before. I mean, just in terms of the guy's like a tarantula going backwards. Yeah, he spins and he sees an incredible pass. I mean, I haven't seen that, like literally that kind of, that sense of gravity, that dribbling since Gaza. And that's the best one I can pay him.
Yeah. I think he's a good shot. No, I could not agree more. I think we have the makeup to get things done. And I think to your point, and I'm going to kick this to David. I know he's going to bring it home because me and him are just totally on the same page here. But you talk about Mourinho. You talk about in the past that we'd go into this game questioning ourselves. We're not questioning ourselves as much anymore. I don't necessarily think we have significantly more talent than we did, but we have a certain manager who knows how to get the most out of what is at his disposal. So, David, I think what I'm asking you to do is talk to listeners through the Jose situation and through why we need to be very hopeful about what's in front of us.
Yeah, look, first of all, people need to realize this is one of the worst Spurs squads we have had in a while, to be honest with you, in my opinion. And the fact that we're talking about challenging on all fronts just shows the Jose effect. Jose is the manager that can come in and get the most out of average players. Like, you look at our backline, it's average. Now, it was very suspect last year, even under Jose, but what he's done is he's made the team defend as a unit. He's seen the weakness, he made the team defend as a unit, and he knows when you have Harry Kane and Son in the team, you can always go up the other end and score a goal. It's not a problem. And you've seen that against Liverpool. The only thing is we weren't clinical enough. But for me, with Jose Mourinho, everyone has to get behind him. Like, you see a lot of these people, Jose out. Do you know what I mean? We want to play attacking football. But at the end of the day, lads, we've tried attacking football. Where's it got us? Nowhere. It's got us to the nearly men. We're still the same club that everyone laughs at. Jose Mourinho, he's a proven winner. He's won leagues. He's won European titles everywhere he's been. Everywhere he's been. The guy just knows how to win stuff. Like with other Pochettino, you have a philosophy. You go in, you play the same way every game. Not with Jose. Jose sits there, he identifies weakness, and he sets up the team to exploit them and go and win the game. Now, going into these big games under Pochettino, we would have all been a bit nervous going into them. Going in under Mourinho, we go in expecting to win. And that's the Jose Mourinho effect. This is what he brings to the team. Now, believe me, if he had his choice, a lot of these players wouldn't be here. But he's getting the best out of them. Like, we know we have three right wingers there. We have Lamela, Lucas, and Bergwijn. They're not chipping in. But he's still getting the best out of them. What he's doing is he's rotating them. He's dripping them in and out, and they're all getting us through the games at the minute. And for me, this is why everyone needs to back Jose. Everyone has to back Jose. Jose is a born winner. And like, you don't get in Jose to not win trophies. That's why there's so much expectancy on Tottenham at the minute, because you just don't bring in Jose to not win your trophies. But at the same time, I call on not Daniel Levy, because Daniel Levy is just paid to do what the board want them to do. I'm calling on Joe Lewis to back Mourinho. Because look, I firmly believe we're going to win trophies this season. But you back Mourinho in the summer transfer window, we can very well go on and dominate the Premier League and Europe easily under Jose.
I love it. Absolutely. Premier League, Champions League, everything to be hopeful for. Andrew, I know you want in on this. Get these last words before we wrap up.
I'm hopeful they can do a job on Thursday. I wouldn't say I'm expecting them to. It's still Liverpool. They're still, they're still that team. But you go in hoping to play the way that they did in the second half at Anfield. And if they can do that, you would expect good things and good results. I mean, if you remember that match, Spurs really played it kind of the way that they should have. And, the underlying stats that I won't mention out loud on this podcast would tell you that they should have won that match, but things didn't go that way. And, them's the breaks. You don't get, you don't even get the 1 point you miss out on any points because of what happened late in that match. So if things can break a little differently on Thursday, that would be great, because that would hopefully launch them into a string of fixtures where, I mean, look, I talked about the Premier League and how it's really wide open. This is the kind of match, if you want to, at the end be standing up at the top, this is the kind of match you go out and you get 3 points in. If you want to be a top 4 contender, you go out and get 1 point, and and then continue to kind of trot along. But if you want to like cement yourself as, yes, we are in this thing and we want to be in it all the way through the spring, this is the kind of match that you have to go out and put your cojones on the table and say we're here, and hopefully they do that.
Yeah.
And sorry, just quickly before we end, just for Georgia as well. The games that we have dropped points this season has been individual errors by the players out in the field, not Jose Mourinho. It's another point to get behind Jose Mourinho. His tactics has worked. It's been individual mistakes that have let him, but not only him, the other 10 players that didn't make that mistake down. And I like we have one of the best records from goals. I think we've only conceded like 4 goals from open play this year. The rest have all been set pieces and individual errors. So for me, like, Jose Mourinho's tactics works. You have to get behind Jose and stop criticizing him and start laying the blame at the players' doors. But then again, if you look at the players, is it their fault because they're not good enough for Tottenham? No. Then you go to Joe Lewis. But that's why you get behind Jose. His tactics are working. And if anyone can do it, Jose can.
Yep, I love it. Siobhan, bring us home. Any last words?
Oh, I just hope that, like I said, apart from coach, and that's it. That's because that's what we can do as fans. Right now, it sucks. I mean, I live right in the corner from the stadium, or I used to anyway. Well, I'm not in a hotel, and like I said, I want to be there, give my support. But right now, like I said, we have to get behind them players, get behind the manager. I mean, like I said, Pochettino, we brought in Ndombele. Maybe he was coming towards the end of his first career anyway, because you just tell there wasn't something right. And he has got a tuner than Ndombele, which, and we're seeing consistency. I mean, since I won't say beginning of this year, but I think definitely maybe since December, he has been playing at a really good level. And this is without that safety net of, say, Gio Celso, who you normally bring on like half an hour to go. We can actually play Ndombele for 90 minutes, which wasn't possible. And I think definitely considering, the passing that we'll need to keep the ball. We'll need to be able to give the ball to someone that can hold on to the ball, possession-wise, not someone like, because I'm sure that isn't Harry Winks. So it's on the guy, but he's not someone, I mentioned a passing hub. You can give him the ball and he can be like, I don't know, I've got like a head gasket. He can just, release that pressure. And Ndombele can do that.
Yeah.
Sissoko, just because his sheer size, can do that. So, like I said, I'm just looking forward to seeing if Andrew got 11 for 11 yesterday. I wonder if he can get 11 for 11 again on Thursday. And as long as Davinson Sanchez isn't playing, then there won't be Davinson Sanchez error that he can also count.
I'm not picking Sanchez this week. I know that.
You heard it here first. He is not picking Sanchez. We have a resident pick Mourinho expert on the pod. He's not picking Sanchez against Liverpool. That's a conversation for a whole nother episode. But I will say this, we've had enough conversation. It's been fantastic. We'll leave it at that. Any questions, any concerns, any points of interest, any pushback, hit us up on Twitter. The 4 of us are happy to continue to divulge on the conversation. But for Siobhan, for David, for Andrew, for all of Tottenham, for Jose Mourinho and the 4 trophies we're winning this year, I've been Scott. I will say, come on, you Spurs. Coast.